We've got Mike Shutty here, author of the Kentucky Derby SuperScreener. Thanks for catching up with us while you're in Louisville, Mike.
Sure.
Mike, now that the initial analysis on this year's Kentucky Derby Problems of Field is done, what strikes you about this year's lineup?
That's a great question because I've been doing this for a while. And I think in this year's field, what I've noticed is that there's a lot of these early energy distribution types. And that's particularly the presser type running style. And give you some perspective, a couple of years ago, when we had Palace Mouse, Kind of Freak, there were about 11 presser pace types in that field. And that was a complete collapse race. Now we probably aren't going to get that scenario this year, but last year we only had 6, maybe 7 presser types. And you saw what happened. California Chrome was able to set off leaders and have a relatively easy time across reasonable fractions to actually win that race. So I think we're going to get something in between, but there's no question in my mind that's going to be very pressured.
Well, as you know, last year's Kentucky Derby SuperScreener produced a great return on the recommended wagers thanks to the SuperScreener's top bomber.
I love that one.
Finishing second place in Monster Odds. What has been the track record for SuperScreener's top bomber over the years?
We're getting spoiled because the last 4, we've hit it every year. So if you go back to the time Animal Kingdom won the Kentucky Derby, he was our top bomber pick that year. Went the day well, was in 2012, 2013 was Golden Soul, and of course, as you mentioned, last year it was Commanding Curve. So there's a little pressure on us to, I think, keep the streak going, and of course we're working diligently to find that. And we've come down to about 4 potential contenders at this point. Need to see who makes the field, but within that, we believe that Next Bomber is our key pick.
So Mike, sometimes almost half of the horses in the Derby are going off at odds of 20 to 1 or higher. What is the key to isolating those 1 or 2 bombers that really have the best shot at hitting the board?
Yeah, it's a unique race that you aren't going to find anything the rest of the year where half the field potentially could be 20 to 1 or higher. So I think, again, most people will look at it and say, well, it's pretty much closers. And that's true. I think if you look back over historically, there's no secret that a lot of these horses are passing tired horses in the stretch. But that still doesn't answer the question as to why do some succeed and others don't. And this was a real critical part of our analysis, was to really go back historically and answer that question. What makes this particular bomber that goes off at 25, 30 to 1 special or different or more likely to hit the board than the rest of that field? And so we've always been, I think, very transparent in our SuperScreener to go through when we selected that top bomber and actually tell you exactly why and what this horse has that the other bombers do not. So I think, again, this year we will do exactly the same so that it's much more based on history and the science of the SuperScreener than it is anything about a feeling or the prep race or, trainer intention.
Cool.
So who has the SuperScreener this year?
Well, this year we're going to I see what you're trying to do there, lure me in. No, we're not going to go there. So we still have a lot of work to do, right? Because, again, there's some horses on the bubble. And I think what we want to do is, as we always do, the workouts are really important. Who's coming to this race super well? Commanding Curve was sort of marginal for us, but boy, once he was on the field here, or on the track here at Churchill Downs, it was an easy conviction for us to really lock in on him. Back in 2008, Dennis of Cork, too, was a 3rd place horse, our pick that year, and he just absolutely looked glowing on the track. So, again, it gave us the conviction. So we need to get the final field, see who actually makes it, and then we also need to understand how these horses have been working, and depending on who defects from the field, how does that change the pace scenario? So I think those are the things we'll be considering when we make a finalization on our final edition of the SuperScreener and which bomber we end up going with.
Mike, thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell us when we can expect to see the final release of the SuperScreener and what exactly you do add to that book?
Sure. Looks like they're going to be drawing the post positions on Wednesday, April 29th. And so by Thursday morning the 30th, we'll have the following, which is we'll update all the analyses for each of the horses depending on how they've been working out, any other developments that trainers share or anyone else for that matter. And then we'll also be taking a look at, again, just all the workout patterns, who's glowing, who's slowing, and really incorporate that into the analysis. We also want to make sure that we have the post draws. We want to understand who's going to be compromised by that. And then lastly, it's really about the wagers. So once we have all information, now we have the impetus to pick our final bomber and then go ahead and construct the wagers at the low, medium, large, and extra large budgets as we then get into the real spirit of the Derby the day before the Oaks when we'll release this book, which is on April 30th.
Okay, and if people want to learn more, where can they go?
Pretty easy. Just go to SuperScreener.com, and there you can see all the results of past derbies. as well as going through and understanding maybe some of the testimonials that people have shared with us in terms of their experience with the Kentucky Derby Super Screener. And of course, we'll have other rich content that will be populating throughout these next couple of weeks. So look for that as well and enjoy perusing through what should be a very interesting 2 weeks and a lot of content that hopefully delivers in terms of what you'd like to see from the Super Screener this year.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for your time.
You bet. Glad. Thanks.